I'm sorry, Dad, but I have to tell the truth. Those 7 words didn't just echo in the courtroom, they detonated inside my chest. My 17-year-old daughter sat across from me in the witness stand, trembling, refusing to look me in the eye. The same girl who used to grip my hand during storms, who once told her kindergarten teacher I could fly and lift cars. Now she gripped the edge of the wooden bench like it was the only thing anchoring her to the ground, as if I were the villain in her fairy tale. And maybe I was. The prosecution had barely nudged her, just asked a simple question. Did your father ever ask you to lie for him? I expected hesitation, maybe confusion. I didn't expect betrayal wrapped in quiet guilt. I tried to focus, tried to read her face. Was this Sophia's doing? Had she coached her, poisoned her mind? My ex-wife sat smugly 2 rows behind her, legs crossed, face cold as ever. She hadn't flinched since this trial began, even as the charges stacked like bricks. Sophia had once told me that power didn't come from position, it came from who they believe when the room goes silent. And right now, everyone was listening to my daughter. Not the evidence, not the truth, just her voice, and she was breaking me with it. I closed my eyes for a second. Not to pray. I gave that up the day Sophia left me and took the house, the car, and whatever was left of my self-respect. I closed my eyes because I remembered the exact night this all began, the night the fire started. It wasn't arson, that's what the lawyers kept saying, that I torched the records room in retaliation, but they don't know what I saw, they don't know what Ryan did, they don't know that I was trying to protect someone, my daughter. She just doesn't know it was for her. Back then, I didn't have enemies, I had responsibilities, the mortgage, her tuition, Deborah, my assistant, trying to juggle Tiwa's redepartments on her own because the company was bleeding from the inside, and Ryan, the golden boy, the one who always arrived 5 minutes late with a perfect smile, who always had Sophia's attention even when she said she was over him. I saw how they laughed, I saw what he forged, I saw everything. So yes, I took the files. I didn't destroy them. But the fire, someone else started it. And now all of that is gone. They built their case on the absence of truth and filled it with Sophia's lies and my daughter's trembling words. Do you remember what your father said the night before the fire? The prosecutor asked. She nodded, then wiped her face. He told me not to go to school the next day. He said something was going to happen at his office and that it might get ugly. That was true. I had tried to protect her from seeing the aftermath. I never imagined she'd become the weapon used to finish me off. The judge adjusted her glasses. My lawyer leaned in. John, we can ask for a recess. I shook my head. I wasn't going to run. Not from this, not from her. I glanced back at Deborah in the gallery. She looked down, like she always did when things got too heavy. She had warned me. If you don't speak first, they'll write the story for you. But I stayed silent too long. I tried to keep my daughter away from the darkness, not realizing Sophia was already whispering in her ears, dripping venom disguised as love. The court clerk asked for quiet. My daughter looked at me, just once, her lip quivered. I still love my dad, she said, softly. The room was silent. But he's not the man I thought he was. The gavel didn't drop, but my heart did. I wanted to stand, scream, tell her I was still the man who carried her on his shoulders, who taped her drawings to every cabinet in the office, but even if I said it, she wouldn't hear it, because someone already rewrote who I was in a story, and that someone wasn't me. She was born at 3:11 a.m. on a cold Tuesday morning. Her fingers were the first thing I noticed, tiny, curled, but so determined. I remember pressing one fingertip against hers, and she grasped it like it was her entire world. From that moment on, I stopped living for myself. I named her Emily. Sophia didn't like it. She said it sounded too ordinary. But there was nothing ordinary about the girl who'd spend the next 17 years calling me a hero every single time I picked her up from school, fixed a broken drawer, or even just untangled her headphones. To Emily, I was invincible. It's why sitting in that courtroom felt like watching my heart walk into traffic. The same voice that once squealed, "You're the strongest daddy ever," was now saying, under oath, that I told her to lie, that I warned her something bad was going to happen, that I might have done something I didn't do. But to understand why she could ever believe that, you have to understand the people who wanted her to. Sophia and I weren't always enemies. At one point, we were a team. We met during a finance seminar in Chicago. She walked in 10 minutes late with snow in her hair, confident like she owned the place. I made a joke about the weather. She didn't laugh. But she stayed after the panel to argue with me about my presentation. I remember thinking, God, she's exhausting, but brilliant. She was a storm you wanted to chase. We got married 2 years later. Emily was born 3 years after that. For a while, we worked. I was the grounded one, structured, detail-obsessed. She was sharp, spontaneous, socially magnetic. She made deals in rooms I couldn't even enter, and for a while, we both admired each other's strengths. But slowly, Sophia stopped respecting mine. She called me rigid, too cautious, too by the book. When she left, she told me I was holding her back. She didn't just take half of everything. She took the light in Emily's life. At first, our daughter cried every night. She didn't understand why mommy didn't come home anymore, why her bedtime stories were shorter, or why her birthday party was suddenly at a smaller apartment instead of the big house with the stone driveway. I tried to explain custody, careers, compromises, but all she wanted was her mother back. I gave her everything I could. I made peanut butter pancakes on Fridays. I built a treehouse, even though I'm terrified of heights. I let her paint the hallway walls because she said it made the house feel alive again. I was trying to be both parents, and for a long time, it worked. Then came Ryan. He worked under Sophia, first as her intern, then her strategic partner. The first time I saw him, he looked like a catalog model accidentally trapped in a boardroom. Perfect jawline, smooth talker, those fake sincere eyes that never really focused. Emily met him when she was 12. At first, he was just mom's friend. Then he was Uncle Ryan, then he started showing up in more of her drawings than I did. He bought her a tablet, I gave her a drawing pad. He took her to Paris, I took her to the Science Museum. He told her what she wanted to hear, I told her the truth. And slowly, truth started to feel boring to her. The cracks really started when I took the promotion. I became executive director at a non-profit that investigated financial fraud and white-collar corruption. The job came with long hours and no glamour. Emily missed me at dance recitals. I missed her school play. Sophia didn't miss a thing. She was always there, always polished, always ready to compare. You're wasting your life on a non-profit, she once told me outside Emily's school. You could be doing something meaningful. I'm helping people, I said. That's meaningful. No, she replied. That's martyrdom. I never replied. I didn't need to. Because Emily saw me working late. She saw me come home tired but still smiling. She once left a post-it on my desk that read, "You're the kind of man I want to marry one day." I kept it folded in my wallet, even when the fire happened, even when the prosecutors came knocking, even now. Deborah entered my life 4 years after Sophia left. She wasn't flashy, she didn't light up a room, but she was consistent, sharp, grounded. She worked as my operations manager, someone who kept the chaos out of my calendar, someone who'd stay late without being asked. We didn't start romantically. It was late at night, Chinese takeout. Muted laughter in fluorescent-lit rooms. She understood what I carried. She didn't try to fix me. Emily liked her at first. Deborah brought her notebooks with hidden pockets and colored pens that sparkled. But as Deborah and I grew closer, Emily's warmth cooled. I saw the shift in her eyes, the calculation. The comparison. Deborah wasn't her mother. And maybe in some part of Emily's heart, she was waiting for Sophia to come back. Or maybe Sophia never left that space in her heart. Still, Deborah never overstepped. She stayed in the background, always kind, always cautious. She once told me, she's not rejecting me, she's just afraid there won't be room for her mom and me in her world. I remember replying, there isn't room for Sophia, just for Emily. But I might have been wrong, because when the allegations started, when the fire took the storage wing and someone started whispering my name, it wasn't Emily who asked me if I was okay. It was Deborah. Sophia remained silent. Ryan made a statement. Emily avoided me. And when the prosecutors came with photos, when they claimed I had motive, access, opportunity, it was Emily who told them I had said something the night before. She didn't mean to hurt me, I believe that, but belief doesn't mean forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, I watched as my world unraveled one thread at a time. Employees distanced themselves, donors pulled back, my inbox was full of pity and silence. Deborah stood firm, Sophia made herself louder, Ryan remained clean, and Emily, my Emily, was stuck in the middle. I tried to talk to her, to explain. But she'd already formed a new narrative, and Sophia was the narrator. Every Sunday, I still cook breakfast, I still set the table for two. Sometimes she came, sometimes she didn't. When she did, she sat quietly, scrolling through her phone, responding in half nods. She wore Ryan's bracelets, quoted Sophia's phrases, questioned Deborah's presence. When I asked her why she seemed distant, she said, "I don't know who to trust." That hurt more than anything else, because I raised her to trust me. So when she walked into court that day, wearing the blue dress I bought her for her school awards night, I still thought, maybe she'd look at me and remember who I was. But she didn't look at me, she looked at the judge, and when she spoke, her voice trembled with doubt, but her words didn't. I'm not sure what happened that night. But I know he said something was going to happen. I think he knew. Sophia's face never changed. Deborah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a decade, and I sat there, frozen, watching the little girl who once drew capes on every doodle of me, erase the last piece of the hero she thought I was. The first time I noticed the shift, it wasn't in a courtroom or police station, it was at my daughter's birthday dinner. She had just turned 17. I booked a quiet rooftop restaurant downtown, the kind of place with candles on every table and linen napkins no one knew how to fold. I had the chef prepare her favorite lemon risotto, requested a cake shaped like her childhood dog, and even invited Sophia. I wasn't trying to be noble, I just knew Emily would be happiest seeing both parents in the same room. Sophia arrived late, of course, swept in, wearing a wine-red dress and heels, too sharp to be practical. Ryan was behind her, hands in pockets, blazer too casual, smiling like he owned the air we were all breathing. Emily beamed when they walked in. I stood to greet them. Sophia nodded coolly. Ryan offered a handshake, I ignored it. Emily wrapped her arms around her mom like a lifeline. For a second, I saw the little girl again, but when she looked at me, the smile dulled slightly. As if I were the responsible one, not the exciting one. Dinner began politely, too politely. Emily chatted about college apps, her theater audition, a science competition she might enter. Sophia listened like she had all the time in the world. Ryan made little jokes that got Emily giggling. I poured wine, I wasn't in the mood to drink. Then it happened. Emily turned to me and said, "Dad, is it true someone at your office tried to hide money from the foundation's scholarship fund?" I froze. The candle flame on the table flickered. "Where'd you hear that?" I asked gently. "Ryan told me," she said, glancing across the table. "He said you're stressed because one might try to blame it on you." My fork clinked against my plate. Sophia leaned back, expression unreadable. Ryan just smiled and sipped his drink. "I'm not sure that's something to talk about tonight," I said, my voice calm but clipped. "It's your birthday." Emily's eyes narrowed just slightly. "But is it true?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I saw suspicion, not curiosity, not concern, just a doubt. "It's complicated," I said, which was code for yes and no, and you wouldn't understand how messy this really is yet. But Emily turned away, the moment was gone. The rest of the dinner played out like a performance. I watched Ryan feed Sophia some whisper that made her smirk. I watched Emily distance herself from me, degree by degree. When the cake came out, she blew out the candles quickly, not even making a wish. When I gave her my gift, a hand-bound journal with her initials etched in gold, she thanked me like I was a guest, not a father. She left with them that night. That was the first betrayal. The second came a week later, in the form of an email. Subject line, urgent, fire investigation, your statement required. I read the message 5 times. The storage wing at our foundation's office had gone up in flames late Thursday night. A short circuit, they said, or maybe arson. But the fire department couldn't say for sure. What they could say was that the fire conveniently destroyed every financial record from the last 3 fiscal years. I stayed late that night. Deborah had gone home around 7, I left around 10. I remembered locking the door, checking the alarms. I had files with me, copies, not originals, but still, I hadn't reported them missing, and someone noticed. The security system had been disabled between 10:14 p.m. and 2:22 a.m., the window pointed directly at me. Sophia didn't call, she didn't ask if I was okay. But Ryan sent Emily a message. I only found out because she brought it up herself. He says people might come after you, Dad, she said on the phone. He says you should prepare a lawyer. I kept my voice steady. Ryan doesn't speak for me. But he knows people, she replied. And he's worried about you. I wanted to scream, not at her, but at the invisible strings he kept pulling. He was always in the background, always whispering enough to sow doubt, never enough to be blamed. And Sophia let him, maybe encouraged him. I brought in Deborah and my legal counsel the next morning. We started auditing what we could, pulling up backups, checking login logs. Deborah found something. A copy of the records had been downloaded the week before the fire, onto a remote drive. That drive had last been accessed from a device connected to the office guest Wi-Fi. Sophia had visited that week. So had Ryan. Coincidence? My lawyer said we couldn't jump to conclusions, but my gut didn't need more proof. I knew the game, and I knew I was being set up. But what broke me wasn't the accusation. It was the text Emily sent later that night. Dad, did you really stay late that night? Or are you just saying that so people don't blame you? That single line hit harder than any subpoena. I wrote and deleted my reply 5 times before finally sending. I've never lied to you, Emily. She didn't respond. The following Monday, I was formally asked to step aside during the internal investigation. Temporarily, they said, protocol, but I knew what it meant. That night, I went home, poured a glass of scotch, and sat in silence. Deborah came by. She didn't say anything, just sat across from me and laid down a manila folder. Inside were transaction reports, surveillance screenshots, and an email log. All tying Sophia's firm to the exact time the foundation's firewall had been breached. Use it, Deborah said. If you wait for them to tell your story, they'll burn you for it. I nodded, but I didn't move. Because even if I proved it, showed that Sophia and Ryan manipulated access, planted the idea, maybe even paid someone off, it wouldn't undo the damage already done. Emily doubted me. My daughter, my reason for every sleepless night and early morning, was halfway convinced I was capable of burning down everything I'd spent years building. A week passed, then 2. Subpoenas arrived, investigations deepened. Emily stopped answering my calls. I messaged her once a day, always something small. Hope you're okay. Dinner this weekend? Miss you. No reply. Then the call came. I was to appear in court, preliminary hearings. Sophia would testify. So would Ryan, and so would Emily. My lawyer told me gently. Deborah sat beside me, still and quiet. Is she testifying against me? I asked. She's being asked to clarify a conversation, he said. The prosecution is framing it as a key moment. What conversation? The night before the fire. I closed my eyes. That night I called Emily and told her to skip school the next day. There was going to be press at my office, possible fallout. I didn't want her caught in it. Now they were calling it a warning, implication, motive. They were twisting my protection into evidence. I saw the path forming ahead. Every kind word, every protective act, every small sacrifice, weaponized, by Sophia, by Ryan, and worst of all, by Emily's silence. The misunderstanding wasn't just emotional, it was engineered, manufactured by people who knew that a teenage girl's belief in her father could be eroded, drop by drop, until all that remained was doubt. And doubt is louder than love in a courtroom. I used to believe silence was peace, now I know it can be a punishment. Emily hadn't spoken to me in 16 days without hearing her voice, without a text, not even an emoji. That kind of silence isn't absent, it's an accusation wearing a quiet face. Every morning I made coffee for 2. Hers sat untouched. I stopped playing the piano. I used to play a soft tune every Sunday morning because it made her smile when she was little. Lately, even the keys felt ashamed of their sound. Sophia knew what she was doing. She always did. Her strategy was never destruction through fire. It was erosion, subtle, slow, merciless. And now she'd succeeded in convincing Emily that I wasn't just guilty, I was dangerous. Deborah tried to help. She brought food I didn't eat, cleaned papers I'd already read. She once sat beside me on the couch, held my hand gently, and said, "You can break if you need to." But I didn't break. I bent inward instead. I told my lawyer I wasn't sure I wanted to testify. He blinked at me like I'd lost my mind. John, if you don't speak, they'll write the ending for you. What does it matter? I asked. She's already chosen her side. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. I knew I sounded defeated. But I was tired of pretending I could fight a war when the battlefield was my child's heart. Every night, I replayed the moment in court when she first looked away from me. She didn't cry. That would have been easier. She just distanced herself. A clean withdrawal, like someone who removes their name from a lease before the house catches fire. Sophia watched me unravel and said nothing. Ryan smirked through every testimony. They were winning. And what was I doing? Sitting in a half-lit room with cold coffee and empty phone notifications, hoping that one message would say, "I'm sorry, Dad, I was confused," but it never came. What came instead was the night I saw her from a distance. It was raining. I'd driven to the bookstore downtown, hoping distraction would keep me from spiraling. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw a group of teenagers huddled under a shared umbrella near the sidewalk. One of them tilted her head just right, and it was her. Emily. She was laughing, with Ryan. He handed her a hot drink. She sipped it and grinned. I stared through the windshield, frozen. Time didn't stop. My heart did. I didn't honk. I didn't call out. I just watched. She looked happy. Happier than she had looked with me in months. I went home and ripped every photo off the hallway wall, not in anger, in mourning. The frames fell silently, like they understood they were no longer true. The next morning, I told Deborah I needed space. She didn't argue, she only said, "Don't let them steal the last good parts of you." Too late, they already had. By the time the second hearing came around, I didn't wear a tie, I didn't rehearse answers. I sat on the defendant's bench like a man condemned not by law, but by love misplaced. When Emily entered the courtroom, she wore a pale blouse I'd bought her last Christmas. She didn't remember where it came from, but I did. She didn't sit near me. She avoided my eyes. That was worse than if she had glared. The prosecution asked her a simple question. "Has your father ever lost control in front of you?" She hesitated. For the first time, hesitation wasn't mercy, it was a loaded pause. She nodded slowly. "He once shouted at me, after I asked about the fire." "And what did he say?" She swallowed. "He said, 'I was protecting you, you don't know what these people are capable of.'" That was true. But truth in court is only as powerful as who's speaking it. From her lips, it sounded like fear. Sophia didn't smile, but her silence had a crown. When it was my turn to speak, I stood. My hands didn't shake, but something deeper did. "My daughter," I began, "once broke her leg when she was 9. I carried her 3 blocks to the hospital in a storm because the ambulance got stuck. When she cried, I sang to her. She called me a hero. I looked at her. She looked down. I never wanted to be a hero," I continued, "just a father, one who kept his promises, one who stayed." There was no objection, no response, just cold air and colder stares. The judge nodded. I sat back down. And I knew, this trial was never about legal guilt, it was about narrative, who sounded more trustworthy, who looked more believable, and when your own daughter's belief falters, nothing else matters. Later that evening, I got a text from Deborah. "They'll never see the truth if they've already memorized a lie." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked into Emily's old room. Her trophies were still on the shelf, her drawings are still tucked in the corkboard. One of them, a sketch of me with a cape, was fading. So was I. I sat on the floor and cried. Not because I'd lost a case, but because I didn't know if I'd ever get her back. And I wasn't sure if I deserved to. 3 days before the final hearing, my lawyer called me with a voice that didn't match the hour. "You should sit down," he said. I was already seated. "We found something. Or rather, someone did." The next 30 minutes unraveled what I thought was the worst of it. A third-party IT investigator, hired by a board member at the nonprofit, had been scanning network activity backups, deep scans, undeleted caches, hidden pings. It turned out, a remote login had accessed sensitive financial files from a location tagged as private residence. The IP address, it belonged to Ryan. The timestamp, 2 days before the fire. The file he accessed, the same one that was later deleted from our server during the fire. That wasn't just suspicious. That was surgical. I stood in my kitchen, phone against my ear, listening to my lawyer read off metadata like it was gospel. The kind of evidence that didn't shout, it whispered in court, and left juries stunned. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came when he said, and the connection was made from Sophia's apartment. The room stopped spinning, the world tilted just a little to the left. "You're sure?" I asked. "Digital signature is verified, the device ID matches Ryan's laptop, MacBook, serial ending in 9AC. It was connected to Sophia's Wi-Fi at 2:47 a.m. That meant two things. Ryan had the documents before they vanished, and Sophia let him. Or worse, she helped." I dropped the phone and sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the framed photo of Emily on my nightstand. The one from our trip to the lake, back when her hair was still always tangled and her cheeks still flushed from sunburns. She was smiling. I was behind her, half laughing, holding a fishing pole I didn't know how to use. That photo was a relic now. I thought knowing the truth would bring relief. Instead, it brought rage. Because if Sophia had used our daughter as a chess piece while hiding the match under her roof, then she hadn't just won, she'd cheated. I met with Deborah the next morning in a rented conference room. She wore all black, serious and tight-lipped. The kind of look she only used when she was restraining fury. "Will you use it?" she asked, after I laid everything out. "I don't know," I admitted. "You have to," she said. "If not for you, then for Emily. She deserves to know who she's trusting." But that was the problem. Emily didn't want the truth. She wanted clarity. And clarity, in her mind, had already been colored in by Sophia's brush. I ran my hand over the folder. He file contained screenshots, login timestamps, even a screen recording recovered from Ryan's synced cloud folder. He had opened the documents, exported them, and renamed them before deletion. Intentional, calculated, and criminals. Still, part of me hesitated. Not because I pitied Ryan, but because I knew if I used this, if I exposed Sophia publicly, there'd be no going back. Not just legally, emotionally. I'd be proving to Emily that her mother had manipulated the very foundation of their bond, and that could shatter her. But maybe it had to. That night, I drove past Sophia's building. I didn't go in, just sat across the street in the shadows, watching the light in Emily's bedroom turn off around midnight. I whispered to the windshield, "I'm sorry for what I'm about to do." 2 days later, my lawyer submitted the evidence packet. The court exploded. Sophia's legal team scrambled. Ryan vanished from his hotel. News leaked within hours. Suddenly, the quiet non-profit fraud case became a media circus. But none of that mattered. What mattered came the morning after, when Emily showed up at my doorstep for the first time in 3 weeks. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone. "You leaked it," she said. Her voice was shaking. I opened the door wider. "Come in." She didn't move. "Did you really have to do it like that?" "Emily," I said slowly, "I didn't leak anything. I gave it to the court. They did the rest." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Why would you do that to Mom?" "Because she did it to me." "No, she didn't set the fire." "But she helped the person who did," I said calmly, "and let him feed lies to you." Emily looked like the ground had been ripped from under her. She said. Her voice cracked. "She told me you were hiding things, that Deborah was manipulating you, that you changed." "I did," I admitted, "but not because of Deborah, and not because of guilt." She hugged herself. "Then why?" "Because I spent a year watching the people I love drift away, watching you trust someone who smiled while setting me on fire, watching you pull back every time I told you the truth and lean in every time they gave you a prettier lie." Tears spilled down her face. She whispered, "I didn't know." "I know," I said gently. "And that's why I didn't say anything sooner. Because I wanted you to come to your own conclusion. But now, I'm out of time." She wiped her face. "Everyone's going to hate her." "Maybe," I said. "But this isn't about hate, it's about consequences." Emily hesitated, then looked at me. Do you hate me?" That was the first time she ever asked me that. And I hated that she even had to. I shook my head. Never. I hated what they made you believe. But not you. She stepped forward then. Not fully into the room. Just enough for the distance to feel smaller. Can I still testify? She asked. You already did. She nodded. Then maybe I can clarify. I smiled faintly. That's your call. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. I still have that post-it note, she said quietly. The one I wrote when I was 9, about marrying someone like you. My throat closed. Good, I whispered. Because I'm still trying to be that man. She didn't say anything else. Just closed the door behind her. And for the first time in weeks, I let hope in again. The final hearing took place in the city's largest courtroom, a cold marble hall designed to make people feel small, and it worked. The bench towered, the flags loomed, every seat was filled, press, attorneys, public, even the judge looked wearier than before, as if all the secrets everyone had tried to bury had finally risen to the surface and refused to die quietly. Emily wasn't in her seat, neither was Sophia. Ryan was. He sat stiffly at the front, wearing a blue suit that didn't quite fit, hands clasped too tightly in his lap. He didn't look smug anymore, just cornered. My lawyer leaned over. Are you sure about this? I nodded. We waited long enough. Today was no longer about defense, it was exposure. Sophia entered 10 minutes later, right before the session began. She wore a grey dress, neutral. She was pale, but collected. If she felt shame, she wore it like expensive perfume, undetectable, but potent in the air. Emily entered last. When I turned to look at her, she didn't look away. She walked slowly down the center aisle, sat beside her court-appointed counselor, and folded her hands on her lap. Her shoulders trembled, but her jaw was firm. She was ready. The judge cleared her throat. Let's proceed with the final testimonies and submit evidence review. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the defendant wishes to submit a final statement. Additionally, the witness Miss Emily Thorne has requested permission to return to the stand for clarification. Permission was granted. I didn't speak first. Emily did. She walked to the stand like she was carrying glass in her chest, each step careful. The entire courtroom held its breath. She adjusted the microphone. I want to make something clear, she began. What I said before, about what my dad told me that night, it was true, but I left out why he said it. She looked at me. It wasn't a warning to cover something up. It was a warning because he was afraid something bad might happen. He didn't want me near it. She took a breath. I thought he was hiding something, but now I realize, he was shielding me. Sophia stiffened. Ryan didn't move. I believed things I shouldn't have, Emily said. Because I wanted so badly for everything to make sense. I wanted someone to blame. And when someone handed me a version of the story that made it easy, I took it. Her voice cracked. I let people fill in blanks I didn't understand, and I'm sorry. She turned to the judge. My father never asked me to lie. He just didn't want me to get hurt. No. One spoke. Then the judge gently nodded. Thank you, Miss Thorne. Emily stepped down. As she passed me, she paused. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, but she nodded, just once. And for me, that was everything. Now it was my turn. I walked to the front like I'd done it 1,000 times, but this time was different. This time, I wasn't defending myself, I was confronting them. I never wanted this to end in a courtroom, I said. I didn't want to dissect a life I built piece by piece just to prove I wasn't the villain in someone else's play. I looked at Sophia. Her eyes met mine, but only barely. I loved a woman who used to believe in balance, who once told me that truth was the only currency that never devalued. Somewhere along the line, she stopped spending it. Sophia's lips twitched, but she said nothing. I turned to the judge. My daughter believed me once when I told her monsters hide in plain sight, but I forgot to remind her they sometimes smile and say the right things. They buy gifts, they quote justice, and they play long games. I turned to Ryan. You used my family as leverage. You wanted my seat, my silence, my dignity, but all you really proved was that even dressed in designer lies, a coward still looks like a coward. Ryan blinked. Slowly. The room was dead quiet. I didn't just lose my name these past months, I continued. I almost lost my daughter because when doubt is planted early enough, it grows into silence, into distance, into fear. I took a breath. And fear makes people rewrite their memories. It makes them forget who showed up, who stayed, who carried them. I turned back toward the gallery. Emily's face was streaked with tears. I can't undo the silence I let grow between us, I said, my voice softening. But I can promise, on every burned document, every twisted headline, every sleepless night, that I never stopped being your father. I never stopped trying to protect you. I stepped down. The court went silent again. The judge finally spoke. The court has reviewed the supplemental evidence submitted. The connection between Mr. Ryan Fields and the unauthorized access to confidential financial records is verified and authenticated. Miss Sophia Thorne, your proximity to this activity, along with corroborating digital evidence, has raised considerable doubt regarding the previously assumed narrative. She paused. The court will be filing for a separate investigation regarding obstruction, conspiracy, and possible tampering. Sophia's face remained unchanged. But her fingers dug into the bench edge. Ryan lowered his head. The judge turned back to me. As for Mr. John Thorne, in light of the new testimony, updated forensic evidence, and digital recovery analysis, this court finds insufficient evidence to proceed with charges. The gavel dropped. The sound was deafening. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile, I just exhaled. Later, as people cleared the room, I stood in the corridor by the tall glass windows, watching rain collect on the concrete. Emily approached quietly. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me. Then finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "You don't have to be." "I do," she said. I wanted you to be guilty, because it made the other story easier to live with. That wasn't your fault." "No, but it wasn't fair to you." She wiped her eyes again. "I don't know how to undo it," she whispered. "You don't have to undo it," I replied. "Just start again." Behind us, the courtroom lights dimmed. Sophia exited through the far hallway, her heels echoing, her shadow no longer touching ours. Ryan was gone entirely. Emily slipped her hand into mine. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" she asked softly. I stared at the window. "No," I said, "but I won't chase it either." "What about Ryan?" I smiled bitterly. "He'll find another story to squeeze himself into. But not ours." We walked out of the courthouse together, no fanfare, no reporters, just a father and daughter stepping into the rain. Starting over, not as heroes or victims, just as two people learning how to trust again. 6 months later, the headlines stopped printing my name. They moved on, as they always do. Another scandal, another executive downfall, another daughter turning against her father, until, of course, the truth rewrote that ending. But I hadn't moved on. I'd evolved. My house wasn't quiet anymore. Emily had moved back in temporarily after her school semester paused for independent study. She took the guest room, on her terms, but sometimes I'd catch her asleep on the living room couch, curled up with my old law books or streaming late-night documentaries about wrongful convictions. She was trying. And so was I. The non-profit reinstated me, but I declined the position. I didn't want to sit in the same boardroom where half of them once doubted me, not because of evidence, but because Sophia was good at controlling the room. Instead, I built something new. A legal trust for whistleblowers and wrongly accused fathers. I called it the Emily Project. When she found out, she cried. But not out of guilt. Out of pride. She started helping with case reviews, quietly, anonymously, no press, just work. Meanwhile, Deborah and I rebuilt something that never had a label but always had gravity. She didn't ask for a title, she didn't need a declaration, she just came over every Thursday and never left without cleaning something. It was her love language, I learned to speak it. Ryan vanished from the city's social scene, but that wasn't an accident, I made sure of it. After the hearing, his firm crumbled, investors pulled out, former partners leaked internal emails, turns out, he'd forged more than just system logs. Sophia tried to shield him, but once the subpoenas came, her high ground turned to dust, and here comes the final revenge. I didn't take Sophia to court, That would have been too easy. I bought out her company's controlling shares through a shell firm. A silent acquisition. She woke up one morning with a letter on her doorstep, her own resignation, signed and dated, with a clause stripping her of severance for breach of ethical conduct. Her face never made it to the news, but her accounts were frozen for audit within 48 hours. Emily didn't ask me to do it, but she didn't stop me either. She simply said, "You always told me real justice doesn't need to shout." Sophia tried to reach out once. One call, no voicemail. I never picked up. The last thing she ever said to me, face to face, was in the courthouse hallway, just after the final ruling. "You'll lose her again," she whispered. "Girls forgive their mothers eventually." I smiled then, calmly. And boys outgrow their ghosts. That was the last time we spoke. And Ryan? He tried to launch a new startup under a different name. I let it get just enough funding to float, then tipped off the same legal firm that prosecuted our case. His mugshot now lived online forever, beneath charges of tax fraud and wire tampering. It wasn't jail time, but it was a social death. That was enough. As for Emily, our relationship didn't snap back like a rubber band, it stitched itself slowly. We argued once about whether she should visit Sophia in private. I told her it was her choice. She didn't go, not out of spite, out of protection, for herself. She said, "I don't trust her voice anymore." I nodded. That was her victory, not mine. Some wounds you don't close. You just learn to live above them. On the day of her 18th birthday, I gave her something different, not jewelry, not money. I handed her a box filled with the letters I'd written over the past year, unsent drafts, thoughts I never dared say aloud. Apologies, regrets, memories. She opened it slowly and said, "All this time, you were trying to reach me?" I smiled. "Even when you couldn't hear it." She didn't cry this time. She hugged me instead. That night, I found the old post-it tucked inside my wallet again, the one where 9-year-old Emily had scrawled in purple ink, "My daddy is my hero." It was faded, but the words still fought to be seen, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, I believed them again. In the quiet that followed, Deborah sat beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "I think you finally found your peace," she said. "No," I replied. "I didn't find peace, I built it." Outside, the city went on, unaware of the storm that had come and gone inside a father's heart. But somewhere between the courtroom silence and the whispered apologies, between the betrayal and the rebuilding, between the lie and the truth, I'd learned something unshakable. Heroes aren't always believed, but the ones who stay, eventually they are.